Okay, so you know that feeling when you're standing in the drugstore and you pick something up, you flip it over, you read the claims on the back, and you think, this might actually work. That's me. Every single time I head into my local H-E-B or drugstore, I'm always looking. New releases, reformulations, something that caught my eye because the tip is different or the formula is different from what I've tried before. I genuinely love the hunt. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes you find something that actually delivers. Something that you put on your mature skin and you think, okay, this earned its place. These are those products. 11 categories, one must-have per category for the most part, and every single one tested on this face. Not just swatched on the back of my hand and called a review, actually worn. I'm a certified makeup artist. I got my certification in my early 50s when my husband and I became empty nesters, and I finally had the time to go after something that I have been passionate about my whole life. And I'm going to walk you through them in the actual order that I do my makeup, so let's start from the beginning. Now, I've always done my brows first. The whole structure of the face for me, and I like to see where everything else is going to land before I put a base down. Now, most drugstore pencils can run too dark and too waxy for mature brows. Our brows have changed, they're sparser, they may be lighter than they used to be, and a heavy waxy pencil looks drawn on immediately. It's aging in a way that doesn't serve the face. What I look for is a thin tip that lets me make short, precise strokes. I'm mimicking hair, I'm not drawing an outline, and the reason that I landed on Beauty Creations is honestly the tip. It's a very thin chisel tip, which gives me control that a lot of drugstore pencils just don't have. I can get into little sparse areas and fill them in without looking like I colored in my brows with a magic marker. You can go one shade lighter than your instinct. So for example, if you think you need a dark brown, try a medium. The goal is brows that look like better brows, not different brows. So for example, I'm actually using a medium brown. In the past, I probably would have used a dark brown. And so I'm just going to fill in where I am seeing a little bit of thinness, and I don't want to go too heavy and too dark. So I just want to give just a little bit more arch, because for the most part, my brows are in decent shape. I'm a little bit thin here in the front, and I don't want a lot of darkness in the front of my brow because it's going to make my brows look heavy. I just love, I mean, seriously, I absolutely love this chisel tip. If you're in Houston or in Texas, I should say, H-E-B carries the Beauty Creations brand. You can also order from them online. I have ordered a few more products from them just to try. So once I've got that done, I'm just gonna honestly take a spoolie. Now, Beauty Creations, their brow pencil does come with a brow gel at the other end that matches the pencil. Now, in this particular case for today, I'm actually going to stick with one of my tried and true brow gels, which is the Maybelline Super Lock. I'm just going to brush up a little bit just to work that brow pencil through. And then, like I said, always finish with a brow gel to set everything together and to blend. So my picks, Beauty Creations brow pencil, and you can use the tinted gel at the end of it or the Maybelline Super Lock for brow gel. Now, before I move into any complexion products, I always do my eyeshadow first, and there's a reason for that. Eyeshadow fallout is a real thing, and if you do your full complexion first and then go in with eyeshadow, you risk getting powder fallout on the foundation you just spent time applying. Doing eyes first means that any fallout will either land on bare skin, or as you can see, I use under eye patches for several reasons, and we can get into that in another video. Doing eyes first means any fallout lands on bare skin, or if you're wearing under eye patches, it'll land there. But if it's on bare skin, that means you have to clean it up before your base goes on. So it just makes the whole process a little cleaner. Now, as you can see, the other thing I do is I do place under eye masks before I start my eyeshadow. They sit under the eye, they catch any of that fallout as I work, so I'm not chasing powder down my face. I pull them off when I'm done with my eyes, and the skin underneath is nice and clean and ready for concealer later. I'll do a whole separate video on my eye routine because I feel like eyeshadows for mature skin and eye techniques deserve their own conversation. Eyeshadow is done for now. Now we're going to go into complexion. And the first thing I reach for before anything else goes on my face is primer. This is probably the most skipped step I see, and also the one that makes the most visible difference in how long everything holds up. Silicone-based pore blurring primers are very common at the drugstore and are often marketed toward oily or combo skin. So if you've ever grabbed one of these without realizing it, that can absolutely be why your foundation isn't holding. But there are now a lot of hydrating and water-based formulas at the drugstore that work really well for drier, mature skin. You just have to know what you're looking for on the label. Typically, if you see something like dimethicone, then that's a silicone. What we want is something that adds hydration and gives makeup something to grip to, something that works with mature skin and not against it. So my pick today is the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. Now, this isn't marketed as a hydrating primer, but I'm going to explain why I'm using this one today. What sold me on it is the fact that it works well with the foundation I'll be using today, and the texture is very similar to the Topia Silk Canvas. Next step is optional. You may not need it. When I apply my primers, I tend to apply them with a finger so that I can really press it into the skin. And I'm only going to put this where I need it. So just right here where I have a little bit of slightly larger pores. So typically just the center of my face. And I really want to press this in here. The other place that I'm going to place it, a little bit on my nose, because obviously we all have pores on our nose, is I'm also going to place it on my forehead because I have forehead lines, right? And we don't want everything getting trapped in those lines. So this feels so super lightweight. And then with your fingers, you have more control as I proceed to get it in my hair and on my eyelashes. How the heck did I get it on my eyelashes? Let me just blend all that in there. Make sure I've got it all. All right, primer is on. The next step is optional. If you do not have any discoloration or redness or whatever in your face, you absolutely don't need to do this. I do this step because I have broken capillaries around my nose, which means I have some persistent redness in that area that foundation alone doesn't fully cover. So I'm trying to help my foundation. What color corrector will do is it will neutralize those areas before foundation goes on, which means I need less product overall to get a more even result. Now for these broken capillaries, I use a green shade because green neutralizes redness. The key at the drugstore is finding a green that works for your skin tone. Not too bright, not too gray. You want something that will disappear under the foundation rather than showing through it. My current pick is the NYX Pro Fix Stick. These are so super handy. They come in a multitude of shades and they're so easy to travel with. Now, the one thing about this one, it is a little bit dark for me. So again, I'm going to apply it with my fingers so that I can control how much is being applied, and I'm only putting it where I need it, which is right around here, around my nose, and I'm just going to press it in. If I have a couple other tiny little redness spots, again, I would do the same thing, just put it on my finger and press it in. I've got a little bit of redness up here. Now, because I've had the Tixel treatment, my hyperpigmentation is so much better right now, so I really don't need to do much in regards to covering that up. I used to have a huge dark spot here. That's pretty much gone, but I do still have a little bit of darkness on the outer edges of my eyes. I'm going to use yellow because yellow and lavender pretty much neutralize everything. So I'm going to use a little bit of yellow just here on these outer corners where it's still a wee bit dark. You could use a shade of peach depending on your skin tone. You know, if you tend to be more darker skin toned, you're obviously going to want to go to a darker peach, a rust, a red, just to cancel that out. If you tend to look more sallow or yellowy in this area, you can use a lavender, like a lavender blush, a lavender corrector. There's so many options. I mean, makeup is so universal. So this way, as I'm blending it around these areas, there's no hard line for the foundation to sit over. Now, if you don't have any redness or uneven skin tone that foundation alone can't handle, skip that step. It's there when you need it. Now, foundation. And I want to reframe something before we even talk about product. Coverage has been marketed to us as the goal. Maximum coverage, full coverage, buildable coverage. And on mature skin, more coverage usually means more visible texture. Matte, full coverage foundations settle into every line and sit on top of the skin in a way that actually draws more attention to what you're trying to cover. That's not the product working for you. What works for us is a skin tint or a serum foundation if you tend to be more on the normal to dry side. I'm not saying that if you're oily, you shouldn't use a matte, but the challenge, I think, is that as we're maturing and getting older, we might go through perimenopause or menopause and all of a sudden our skin gets oily and then it seems to get dry and then it seems to get combo. You almost have to either find a formula that'll work on that type of skin, or you have to use two different formulas. Like if you tend to be super oily in some areas and dry in others, but that's a lot of work and that's extra money. We don't want to do that. So find something that lets your skin come through while evening things out. The goal is skin that looks like skin, just better skin. My drugstore pick is the Maybelline SuperStay Lumi Matte. You'll notice I was shaking it before we got started. My shade right now is 112, and I am in love with this foundation. Even though it says it's matte, and I am more of a dry skin gal, this foundation just sits so beautifully on my skin. I'm going to be using the Refer LC03, which is probably my favorite brush these days. And I'm going to be honest about the trade-off, right? It can be self-setting, so your playtime is limited. If you have dry, textured skin, you'll want to make sure to take your skin prep seriously so it doesn't cling and look cakey. If you want to step it up a notch with the foundation and go with something more high-end, the NARS Light Reflecting Foundation is definitely worth a few extra dollars. So I do have that one in my inventory as well. But as you can see, this is going on super light, a luminous finish. It's not overly dewy. It's not making me look greasy. And it's covering where I need it to cover. I've only used one pump so far. This is like a pump and a half now. And I just work it into the palm of my hand because the palm of my hand is warm and I really want to work it into that brush. And I keep coming back to this foundation because I love the finish. It just gives my skin such a beautiful satin glow. And the color match for me right now at this time of year is spot on. Bring it down so I don't look like a floating head. And I'm still using that same pump that I put in my palm to get to my forehead. Make sure everything is covered. Make sure my hair is up. I'm doing my ears so that there's no color mismatch. Back of my neck. And just bring it down. And as you can see, I'm doing more of like a pouncing, stippling motion. It may look like I'm beating up my face, but I'm not. It's a pretty light touch. So now look at that. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit to show you guys. I don't know. I'm just in love with this finish. It's just perfectly blended into my skin. Let's talk about concealer. And this is the one where I see the most well-intentioned mistakes, including me. Every day is not a perfect makeup day. So the instinct is to use more product to get more coverage, which under the eye, as we know, that's going to backfire. So heavy concealer creases into fine lines we're trying to hide. And so by mid-morning, it looks worse than no concealer at all. We've all been there, and that's why many of us have kicked the Tarte Shape Tape to the curb. So I find that thin hydrating formulas work best for mature under eyes. My pick is actually the NYX Bare With Me. You've probably heard this from a lot of other artists. Actually keep this in my kit as well because it just works so well. It's a serum concealer. You can build it as you need it. And we're going to go through my preferred application method, which I have shown in other videos. I have two shades. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use today. I've got shade light and shade beige. It comes in a convenient little pump. So let's just see which one might work best for me today. So I think I'm going to go with light, which is this one. Now, as I've mentioned in the past, my current preferred application method is to warm it up on the back of my hand. And this does feel creamy. And then I'm going to just tap it where I need it. I know that looks like a lot, but we'll blend it out. I'm not going to go all the way underneath. I'm going to put a little bit here and a little bit around the corners of my mouth because I'm noticing, as some of you may be noticing, that, you know, the corners are starting to droop. So I want to lift those. So I warmed it up on the back of my hand. I tap a small amount on my inner and outer corners, and then I'm going to let it sit for a second just so that it'll warm up. And then you can blend it out with a fluffier brush. I love this angled brush from e.l.f. It's the V29, but you can use something even fluffier to just blend it out. You can use your finger to blend it out. And as you can see, the reason why I didn't put it here is because this little amount is going to give me exactly what I need. I'm not going all the way up to the lash line. I'm going to clean this up right here because we don't need to go all the way up to the lash line because that's where we have a ton of movement. So that is going to crease for sure. So just tapping it out, bringing it down into where I've got this hollow because I want to bring that hollow forward so it's not so noticeable, and just a little bit down the side of my nose. Now I say current application method because I'm always experimenting with different techniques to see what works and what doesn't. And now before I do any setting of this concealer, I'm just going to let it marinate, shall we say. So let's talk about blush. And this is where I'm going to show you something real, so stay with me. For mature skin, cream blush is almost always the better call. Powder blush can sit on top of the skin, whereas cream melts in. So if you have any dryness or texture, and most of us do, powder blush can look a little chalky and patchy within a couple of hours, and cream blush just wears better. Placement, we've talked about this before. Where did I put my brush? Okay. Above the cheekbone, sweat back toward the temple, not necessarily on the apple of the cheek. The apple can pull the face down and we want lift. Okay, my first pick today is Maybelline Cloud Topia in the shade Moonlight Rose. So let's go ahead and put that on. I'm going to put a little bit, just a tiny bit, on the back of my hand. I never go straight in. And then I'm going to mix it with a brush so I have more control. I know cream blushes can be scary, as can cream bronzers, but if you put it on the back of your hand first and just play with it a little bit, you'll have more control and it won't feel as scary. And you can see this has a lot of pigment, and I am just using a tapping motion. I don't want to disturb the foundation underneath. I'm not sure if I like this color. It might be a little bright for me today, but I do like the texture. This is not my first time using it. I have used this before. It's not really moussey, but it's not like a heavy cream either. As you can see, it blended really well into my skin when I was doing it on the back of my hand, and it dried immediately. Now, I want to be honest with you. I don't know if it's the lighting today, but I feel like this might be reading a little bit too bright, and the fact that it dried down so quickly. I'm going to go ahead and try another blush that I really like, and this is why I say this is exactly why, you know, I always want you to know your options. So I'm going to, on the other side, swap it for the CoverGirl Skin Enhancer, TrueBlend Skin Enhancer, and this one is in the shade Spice Rose. The colors are very similar. I know it looks pretty dark, but when I swatch it, actually this is a little darker. Again, swatched on the back of my hand. So the colors are actually super similar. It's just two different formulas. One's a stick and one's more of like a cream. So it just depends on the day, the lighting, and what I'm going for. The other thing I want to recommend is to always keep your foundation brush handy. You don't have to put any more product on it, but if you find that you might have gone up a little too high, a little too far in, a little too low, you can always take your foundation brush along the edges and fix it. Now you can also, if you want, not required, but if you tend to be a little bit more oily or sweaty or live in a high humid climate, you can also set these with a powder. So I could go over this with, this is the CoverGirl TrueBlend Skin Enhancer Powder. This is a baked blush. And you guys, look at the size of this pan. I mean, it is huge. So I feel like, in my opinion, that it rivals some of the more expensive baked blushes. This one is in Please Please Pink. And then this one's a little bit more natural looking. This is in Rose Latte. I have one more downstairs that's a little too bright for prime time, so I didn't bother bringing that one up to test it. But this one here, this Rose Latte, I feel like if there's a day where you just want quick and easy, this could almost be like your bronzer blush combo. We interrupt this regular scheduled broadcast with an announcement, because I have so much juicy goodness in this video that it's running kind of long, and I don't want to keep you guys here for that long because we could be here probably for another 20-30 minutes. So join me over in part 2 where we're going to finish up this makeup look, because you do not want to miss my process for setting makeup when you live in a really humid climate or are fighting with hot flashes. So I'll see you in part 2 with more tea, tips, and tools for your pro-aging power moves.